Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is a bit of an inaugural event for us. We've never had a NZARE presidential speech before. I think we always think of our presidents as sort of standing behind us and sort of pushing, whereas this kind of feels more sort of leadership-y. So we'll see how it goes, and if you've got your rotten apples ready, you could always throw them if I don't do it right. So I'm just going to speak for about 15 or 20 minutes about some matters relating to the organisation. And then after that, we're going to present the Mackenzie Award, which is very exciting. Sorry, a bit of transition-y stuff. The first thing that I'd like to do is to formally thank from the NZARE to the Aare for organising this wonderful conference. It's been fantastic. I'd like to thank you for including our organisation in every point of the planning, for engaging with us on the most friendly terms, for accommodating on a collegial basis at all times and modelling an approach of cross-national and cross-sectoral work that is all too rare in the current era of aggressive competition. And I'd like the NZARE people please to applaud the Aare. Thank you. This photograph is actually on our website. It was taken in 1977 at an early childhood conference. Some of you, anyone know where it was taken? No? Whakarata, that's right. It's at Massey University, and that's Whakarata, which at the time was the staff club, and there was the famous Russell Room in that corner, dominated by a painting of Lady Russell. This was actually taken 2 years before the NZARE was formed in 1979, but included many of the people who are actually active in starting our association. And in doing so, they were very keen to put educational research on the map and to provide support for themselves and also, of course, for the conferences. The journal had already been around for quite a long time at the time. So we're now 35 years old. Happy birthday, NZARE. Looking back, and there's going to be a history written by Richard Smith in the next year or two with the help of others. But look, sort of from my perspective as someone who's been around for a long time, the heyday was in the 1980s and early 1990s. There was a lot for researchers to get their teeth into. There were huge struggles and debates and the occasional set of fisticuffs when people had a bit to drink at the end of the conference dinner. Including one very famous event between two professors, which we were all terribly excited about. The nature and role of education, tomorrow's schools, the blueprint for a neoliberal education, which came out in 1988 and led to the reforms of 1989. Emerging Maori education analyses, and Graham talked about a lot of those and how those emerged this morning. There was always a few sparks at the conference, and we all lived in terror because there were sort of groups of senior, generally male academics, all too ready to leap down the throats of your PhD researchers as they ventured sort of stutteringly to present an analysis of their work. And it was a much less collegial and much more confrontational approach in those days, as I see it, and I'd be really interested in other people see it as the same. So the first joint NZARE-AARE conference was held at Deakin in either 1992 or 1993. I couldn't actually quite work it out. I remember I took a group of 7 postgraduate students with me, and we'd raised funds all winter by running sausage sizzles. And so these were the days of very few resources, and we went out to Deakin and had a great conference. I think there was a lot in those days of talking past each other than talking with each other. You know, by that time, New Zealand was in the grip of a most extreme market model, and Australia, I think, wasn't quite yet. And so there were differences at that time. You caught up, of course, on the neoliberal things. So by the 2000s, the perception by some was that the NZARE has become less relevant, and in particular that that people joined maybe to go to the conference at a cheaper rate rather than because they could get very much out of it. And the focus had always been on a sort of an amateur endeavour, you know, very freely given by giving people. And the names of all our past presidents and many of our other contributors are on the website. And so we were an amateur organisation, but we kind of did get bigger, largely because the sector began to expand. And we weren't able, for example, to manage our own accounts. Our accounts got a bit big for us. And we also became unable to easily run our own conferences as people got busier in the 1990s. And also there were difficulties in getting people to spend the time on producing the journal. And so what we started doing, largely because a small amount of funds had been laid up from past conferences, and we did have a wee bit of money, was we started outsourcing, in fact, all three of those tasks. We paid the NZARE to do our accounts. We contracted with an organisation to run our conferences, and we got some help over the past few years with the journal. But as a result of that, the NZARE Council had some difficulties in doing what it wanted to do, because we were paying all our... Oh, okay, sorry. So we lacked ability to do anything other, really, than the tasks we paid out for. And there were some real issues. For example, the people we contracted, the NZARE, who did our accounts, did a lovely job of them, but they weren't always able to tell us who our current members were. They also had a system which was not very functional. So, for example, when we started the special interest groups, we weren't able to send out an invoice that had membership and also which special interest groups you're on. And so it wasn't a very functional system for us. Over the years, we have had increasing problems getting editors for the journal because the work has appeared to be so large. Until 2006, we were invisible as our own conferences. You wouldn't have known you were at the NZARE conference. We didn't have any pull-up banners. Our logo was very old and outdated. We didn't, until then, have a service desk, a place where people could go to ask about membership. And our lovely membership secretary from about that time onwards started making very large bowls of lollies as an institution of our service desk, so people would come to see us, and so people would walk past and pick up a gummy worm and off they'd go, you know. So we didn't have a strong membership focus. We used to put people forward for boards and other things without first asking, are they a member of our association? And in the past 3 years, we've worked really hard to actually ensure that we're actually supporting our own members. So that many tasks needed doing remained undone, and especially in terms of supporting members. So what we did, over the past 2 years, we've been through a major restructuring, which basically a number of us instituted right at the beginning of 2 years ago. It was time 2 years ago. We employed an executive officer, Caroline, who I'm sure you've all met, and she took on those core tasks of the accounts, supporting the journal, and next year she'll be actually organising her first major conference, but she's organised a number of seminars for us. And she can do other work that the council wants done. And so we've now got somebody, if we say, this is what we want done, we can actually get it done. So we've got that additional flexibility. At the moment, it's costing us a bit more, but in the end, it won't. Once Caroline starts organising conferences, we'll get back at least what she earns, at least we hope so. So it's a good economic model. We've also set up special interest groups, and we didn't have them for a long time, and we've now got 8, is it 10? 8 special interest groups, and there's certainly interest in others. We've reached out to other organisations, and just to give you one example, like Australia, we suffer from an issue that the education research profession is low status within the institutions and indeed within the societies. Education ministers frequently ignore the advice of educational researchers. And do so with impunity without feeling they need to explain why they don't take our wonderful research-driven advice. One of the effects of this, just to look at one issue, is that we only have 2 of our people among the 400 fellows of the Royal Society of New Zealand, so 2 educational researchers out of 400. And so this year, we joined the Royal Society several years ago, and this year we actually made a big effort and we put forward 7 names to that of very worthwhile people doing fantastic research, 7 senior researchers. We recently found out that our strike rate was 0 for 7, unfortunately. But the aim is to actually build on that and to maybe to get into discussion. So we're able to engage on an institution-to-institution basis. We've also made really good connections with national bodies, and we've also made really good connections with international bodies. And now, because we've got an executive officer, we can get some continuity. We don't lose everything just by a change of personnel. So the aim now, I think, is to raise the horizons of educational research in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So the things we've talked about doing, and some which I think we should do, is the first one's professional development and career development. It was really interesting yesterday in a paper by Peter Roberts and another lady, whose name's I've forgotten, I'm sorry, that we talked about the PBRF research funding scheme and how disempowering it is, and the possibility, for example, should we teach our members how to play the system and get higher points, or would they think that's an insult? And we don't know the answer to that, but just sorts of things, doing small things that we can in a very toxic neoliberal environment to actually support our members to enhance their own situation, working all the time, I think, all with the eye also on the big picture, on raising the status of the education research profession as a whole. So also national linkages I've already talked about to enhance the status of educational research. There's a lot more we could do, I think, in that area. And then international linkages, I think, are increasingly important. And we're looking to a range of those. We've had Cheryl as our international committee responsibility for several years now. And we're growing those responsibilities too. We want to continue to build partnerships under the Treaty of Waitangi with Māori members and also with Pacifica members, and this is part of our constitution. We have a requirement to do this and to help build those relationships. We also have a responsibility to support kaupapa Māori research based on the values of Māori society. I'm very keen that we should, and certainly other presidents have tried to attract back senior researchers, high-performing professors who now get lots of invitations to go overseas and therefore don't come to our conference. And I think that there are leadership issues that could be developed around that. I think it's really hard because there's so much pressure for individual self-advancement in the institution, and yet, you know, when you dig under that, people are really happy to work together to enhance the relationship. So I think it's just finding the ways to do that. So all of the current work we've done is possible because we have had some reserves. They've been run down because we didn't make a profit for last year's conference. And of course, this year we don't have any conference income because we've come to you. So in the future, we'll expect you to come back to us and we'll get lots of lovely lolly from you. So we need to start building our reserves up again, and that's one of the challenges. So just thinking about, I feel really old sometimes, and you know, in my lifetime, academic work has shifted from a position of unprecedented autonomy and lifetime tenure. You know, my ex-colleague, the late Professor Roy Nash, he'd say to Roy, you know, why did you become a lecturer, Roy? And he said, well, you know, I got to university and I looked around and I saw the lifestyle of all these blokes, and I thought, that's a good lifestyle, I want it too. And he wouldn't say that now, would he? He'd say, gosh, what a group of frazzled and stressed people. You know, so we've moved from that to a position of top-down managerial control, rules imposed often without any consideration of the educational context, and immense pressures from within the institution and without on researchers. And I mean, the question of what autonomy is actually left is a really good question. To date, the NZARE has remained silent and disengaged from these issues, even though it has affected our members in many, many ways. So, as this is my last day of office of official service to the NZARE, I'd like to wish the incoming council well in progressing all of these challenges. I've had 3 separate terms as input editor, 4 years as a journal editor, 2 years as vice president, 2 years as president, and 10 years on the council in 2 batches between 1992 and 2014. So it's time I left this place to the next group of people, although I still see you at conferences, and I believe I'm doing some work in 1 or 2 of the SIGs over the next little while. So that's a little bit about the NZARE, and you see that we've done a lot and there's still a lot to do. Thank you. It's now my pleasure to introduce the winner of this year's Mackenzie Award for service to the NZARE and to education research. And this is Nick Zebka of Massey University in Palmerston North. Nick, would you like to come forward, please? Okay, you stand there while I talk about you. Okay.
Yes.
Associate Professor Nick Zepka's exemplary research career has extended across 4 decades. Nick has made a significant contribution to educational knowledge as an historian, futurist, critic, theoretician and practitioner. He has worked in polytechnic, community and adult education settings, and most recently at Massey University. As a member of the New Zealand Commission for the Future in the late 1970s, Nick contributed to and personally wrote many publications on possible futures for New Zealand. Probably not the...
Not the one that was
right.
actually got.
Not the one we got, that's right. Later, his focus shifted to adult education in the tertiary sector, where his sustained research efforts and many publications have made an important contribution to new knowledge. Nick has successfully instigated, resourced and led collaborative research projects that have opened up opportunities for others. His advice was influential in the establishment of Aare as a national centre for excellence in tertiary teaching and adult education research, tertiary teaching, learning and adult education. Internationally, Nick is held in high esteem in his research field. His work is important because he is able to capture both the complexity and breadth of constructs, such as engagement with learning. Some of his studies have subsequently been replicated in other countries. Nick was invited to be a foundation member of the editorial board for the highly regarded journal Active Learning in Higher Education and served for some years as editor of the New Zealand Journal of Adult Learning. His many publications are widely cited by others, and in 2011 he was awarded the Hertzer TER-NZ Research Medal. Nick is frequently invited to speak at international conferences where he is renowned both for his theoretical contributions and for the innovative practical pedagogical strategies and advice that he develops and tests in response to his findings. Nick embodies the virtues of an excellent educator. He is open to new and different ideas, willingly reflects on his own practice, and brings a keen scholarly intellect to all his endeavours. True to his commitment to adult learning, he is generous with his time and expertise, and many people here will actually experience that. Nick has provided challenging but supportive research mentoring for many novice researchers. He has actively promoted and facilitated research by Maori and Pacifica researchers in Aotearoa, New Zealand. His humility, integrity, willingness to work in preferred Maori ways, and tireless efforts have earned him considerable mana and esteem among members of these communities. As one former student noted, the enlightenment that comes from learning with and from Nick is a seed planted abroad, ready to take root and grow in many different settings. Nick Zebka is a very worthy recipient of the 2014 New Zealand Mackenzie Award. And as for his awards, Nick was able to choose a New Zealand artwork, and he chose this because this is an area, it's a painting of an area in which he frequently goes for walks and spends his time. It's beautiful, by a Palmer's North artist. So there we'll leave that up as the backdrop, shall we? Or have you got a...
Well, it's much prettier than I am.
We'll see you inserted into it. Have you got a PowerPoint for...
No, I haven't got a PowerPoint.
Okay, well, we'll leave that
I
up
wasn't aware
then.
that I had to make a big speech.
Thank you. Yes, you were going to make a speech now.
Am I?
Yes?
Oh.
We've got a whole hour for you.
I think we'd have to let everybody leave early. But I will say a few words. Thank you, Liz, and thank you for your presidency and your work for NZARE. I think your leadership has moved the association heaps forward, so thank you for that. Thank you. Oh, actually, what I thought first when all of this was read about was, my gee, I'd like this at my eulogy, at my funeral. And actually, I shall have to instruct my estate to make sure that that gets read as I get wheeled off into the sunset. But to get an award like this means you have stood on the shoulders of many people. And from my point of view, it is as much the award for all of the people I've worked with over the years as it is for me. Actually, I think it's probably more an award for them than for me. So what I want to do is to just say a few words of thanks to various people. Because I'm getting a shocking memory for names, I'm not going to go through oodles of them, but rather mention some groups of people that I am incredibly grateful for the help that they've given me. A few names also. The first name that I want to mention is great thanks to John O'Neill, who's the director of the institute, the department that I have worked for. And I must say I was both gratified when he said that he was going to nominate me for this award, but a moment later I sort of started chuckling. Who, me? And it has been, until it was announced, a little bit of a joke, because I couldn't quite get my head around that I might have got this award. Secondly, I think I do have to thank and want to thank NZARE, not so much for this award, but for the years of sustenance that they have provided, the organisation has provided, to that part of me that has loved research. Part of me also loves teaching. But NZARE has been a great sustainer for me during the years that I was in the polytechnic sector and not in the university sector, where research wasn't the thing of the greatest interest to the people in that sector. So NZARE was always there, and I have to confess, as far as I remember, I was at the first conference for NZARE in Wellington, so I've been around for a long time and my teeth are just about on the ground. Also, I want to thank the people who supported the nomination. There must have been a group of people who were contacted to see, who's this guy Nick Zepka? And so I want to thank those people who have supported my nomination, and I'm extremely grateful for them. I want to thank my students, the ones that I've worked with over the years. And, it's an incredibly enlivening, energising experience to work with lively, energising students. And I've had a lot of that over the last few years, and they have inspired my research. Two of my current doctoral students are here, and they keep me going all the time. They really extend me. And of course, Ella this morning, she critiqued our work in the first article she wrote, and she critiqued it severely. And, you gain from that, you grow from that, and that was fantastic. I also want to thank the numerous people whose work I've drawn on. You cannot do your own thing. So there are lots and lots of people whose work I have used and who have helped me grow. And I am grateful, even though many of them I've never seen and I'm never likely to see, I am grateful to them. And of course, since Professor Google came on the scene, I've been able to make acquaintances with many more than I would under normal circumstances. I want to thank also my colleagues at Massey University, who have been very supportive and who have been an inspiration, or some of them have been an inspiration, some of them have been exasperation, but I thank them all because they helped me grow. I do want to thank two further people on an intellectual level who have really fed me and have been responsible to make me the researcher that I am. And you understand my research area for the last 10 years has been teaching and learning in the classroom, and that's one major influence that has driven me, and worked on a number of research contracts about student engagement, student retention in higher education, and so that has been one focus. But the other focus, the one I've never been able to get away from, is that teaching in a classroom takes place in a political context. So the politics are ever present when I write about teaching and learning in the university context. We are doing it in a political environment and a political consciousness, if you like. And those two things I've tried to bring together, particularly at the moment. These are the two things that I'm struggling with. How can we improve learning and teaching, but try to get away a little bit from the neoliberal forces that are impacting on us? And the two people that I'm really grateful for one of them is John Codd. Now, John Codd, now deceased. I was lucky enough to be in his department for 2 or 3 years, but the influence he had on me was in his writings before I even met the guy, and the writings he produced about the outside forces that impact on education. And not only was John Codd an inspirational researcher, he was also a really good guy. And I do want to thank him a hell of a lot. The other person I want to thank, and that comes more from the teaching and learning side, is Linda Leach, who's had an enormous influence on the way I think. She also happens to be my wife, but we've worked, fought, and laughed on a number of research projects that we work together, and my thinking about learning and teaching in the higher education environment has been influenced hugely by Linda Leach and the way she looks at it. She looks at learning and teaching completely differently to the way I do. It's like Mars and Venus, but it is a very productive process, and I think we've done very well as a working team. And we do reasonably well as a partnership on other levels as well. So these are the people that I really want to thank. But, you know, all people that I work with, that I talk with, have some influence. And sometimes in the middle of the night, yes, I do wake up sometimes in the middle of the night, a flash comes. And these are precious things. And so people and the contributions they make to my thinking are really precious and huge. Thank you, everybody, and thank you, NZARE, for the award. And please let me have a copy of that wonderful citation so that I can give it to my estate. Oh, there it is. Right, great.